There's something profound that happens when a person finally discovers that who they've always been actually has a name. Today's guests have spent their lives channeling deep feeling into music, one composing and recording from a place of quiet passion, the other with 22 albums across a career that moves wherever the spirit leads, from the Tennessee heat of Nashville and Memphis all the way to the Pacific Northwest. Walt Lofstrom and Michael Robinson are singer-songwriters. They are mentors, they are creators, and they are both, as it turns out, highly sensitive men. When they found their tribe, they didn't just feel seen, they wrote a song about it. It's called Something Right With Us, and that title alone tells you everything you need to know about the men you're about to meet. Today, we're talking music, high sensitivity, and wherever the conversation decides to take us. I'm your host, Marcus O'Day, alongside Bill Allen, and this is Still Waters Podcast.
Life's too short, it's been so long. Why am I so sensitive? Is there something wrong? Am I alone?
If you find yourself feeling there's something wrong with you because you're more sensitive than others, there's some great news. You may be like us. We were born into a rare population on this planet with a gift rather than a curse, a trait known as a highly sensitive person. There's something right about us to hold and feel deep down inside of us. There's something right about us to love and trust. Deep down inside of us, there's something right about us. There's something right about me to hold and heal. Deep down inside of me, there's something right about me to love and trust. Deep down inside of me, there's something right about me. There's something right about you to hold and heal. Deep down inside of you, there's something right about you to love and trust. Deep down inside of you, there's something right about you. There's something right about us to hold and heal. Deep down inside of us, there's something right about us to love and trust. Deep down inside of us, there's something right about us.
Something right about us and you and me. Deep down inside of us.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Stillwater's podcast. Today, Bill and I are very excited to welcome two not only friends, but great musicians and all around good people. We'd like to introduce you to Walt Lofstrom and also Michael Robinson. And today, we're going to be talking a lot about their journey into the sensitive world, I guess. And they've also written and played a song called Something Right With Me. We'll share that video as well, and we'll get to talk about it. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you?
Good.
Thanks. Good morning.
Morning, yeah, if that's where we are.
Morning. Yeah, it depends on where we are.
So let's start off by Bill and I know that you both are relatively finding out now about your sensitivity. Let's talk a little bit about that. How did you come to that decision, and how, what kind of, was it a conversation, was something mentioned, was, how did you come to understand that you might be a highly sensitive person?
Before you start, I would just say this is becoming a segment for us at the beginning, especially when we're talking highly sensitive men. It's your HSP man origin story or journey or whatever. So yeah,
So yeah,
please feel free to share.
yep, jump in whenever you're ready.
Walt introduced me to the concept.
Okay.
And so that makes my explanation relatively simple. I just thought I was wackier than everybody else in the world.
Wackier in what way?
Well, that everything it sounds kind of crazy. Everything bothered me about the world in relation to me. I saw other people seemingly unbothered by things that made me feel uncomfortable. I found myself from childhood, early childhood, being convinced that there was something wrong or different about me, but I could not express it to anybody else because it did not fall into the frame of reference that I had as a young child, or even when I got into my teens, when I joined the Air Force. All of the things that I went through in my life, I felt like I was different than all of the rest of the world, that other people were not like me. But I felt that maybe I was just insane, but I didn't want everybody to know that, because then they'd lock me up and my life would turn into a terrible mess. So to avoid being pointed out as really wacky as I felt I was, I tried to keep it hidden so nobody could bother me about this stuff. And I found a 12-step program in my midlife, and I found some people that seemed to be a lot like me, but still were different. But I learned a lot from them about feeling different and how to kind of deal with that, but it still always was not quite right. And when Walt mentioned this to me about this thing, I said, is that a real thing? Could that be? Through our discussions and our mutual interests in music and trying to live right, be right, help others, be a wonderful person, I found there was a place for people kind of like me that were highly sensitive about everything.
Yeah.
Michael,
So Walt can probably
Michael,
explain it better. Yeah,
where did you grow up? Could you give us a kind of a region
sure.
of the country that you grew up in? Sometimes that, not always, but sometimes it has also additional factors, cultural factors,
It could be.
especially
Yeah,
for
yeah.
men.
Yeah, I grew up in Florida. My grandparents lived. I had a little farm outside of Tampa, Florida, and I spent many of my early years there, not with my grandparents, with my parents. My dad had gone on the Merchant Marines and was gone for on during the Second World War, and my mom and myself and my younger brother stayed in the house with my grandparents while my dad was overseas. But then he came back, and we We got our own house separate from their place, but the culture that I grew up in was very Southern. And my mom was a Southern Baptist. My dad was a Catholic trying to do things the right way for him. And the two of them, with the influence I had of the Baptist church and the Catholic church, caused confusion in me again, because all of my cousins were Baptist or close kin to that, and my dad and myself and my younger brother, due to the rules of the Catholic Church in those days, we were being raised Catholic. And the rules that they had and the rules that the Baptists had were quite confusing to me, and each one considered the other the enemy. I was also afraid, because they both mentioned the fact that by associating with the enemy, I might be going to hell. I didn't want to go to hell. I was a little boy that just wanted to have some fun. Give me some ice cream and cake at the party. Don't mess with me. And so that to me was part of the beginning of my difference. And that continued when I got into the Boy Scouts, because they were all different than me. And then when I got in the Air Force, they were all different than me. And I got married, and then I got married. And I was convinced I was different than everybody. And so it was with me a long time.
Well, welcome to the highly sensitive world, Michael,
Thank
where
you.
your peeps live.
Yeah.
How about you, Walt? How did you come to this? I'm sorry, Bill. Did you have another question for Michael? Nope. Okay.
Well, Michael, thanks for telling my story. A lot of it. It just felt different my whole life. And then I got into a 12-step program as well, because I was using it to squash down that sensitivity, so I'd be normal, and that didn't work, obviously.
And you mean alcohol, right? By that?
Alcohol, yeah.
Yeah.
We hadn't said it, but that's exactly. I'm a recovered alcoholic, but I've been sober 48 years. So I thought to myself along the way, with mentoring people, everything would be just hunky dory, and that's an old term. Everything would be just great, and I would feel better, and everybody else would feel better around me, and it just wasn't true. And I learned later that you can recover from the addiction to alcohol, and there's more to be revealed. Even that program says, there's a lot more spirituality to be discovered. It's all different. So what did happen for me, or did you have a question? No, okay. What did happen for me was I was in I'll say an internal family systems master's group, a coaching group. And a young lady that I did not know, she was new to our group, and I've been telling our group for a long time, there's something wrong with me. I just feel there's something wrong with me. How come I can't get over this? It was performance anxiety to start with as a musician, and that goes way back in my history, being kind of forced to perform. But what did happen is she said, "Well, have you ever thought that there's something right about you?" And that was the nemesis of our song. I didn't know that was going to happen, by the way. I didn't know that I was going to that we were going to write a song about it. Mikey and I were friends. I call him Mikey affectionately. He's a special man in my life, a good friend. But what happened out of that was I started seeing myself differently. And then I had another friend, a retired social worker, who said, "Well, she's a good friend today." She said, "Well, there's stuff on the web about highly sensitive people. Have you ever heard of that?" Or I said, "No." And so I went ahead and discovered Elaine Aron's book, and then I discovered Bill's books, and I learned, oh my gosh, I didn't know this was a trait. I thought it was a curse, because I've been trying to cover it up my whole life. Anyhow, I don't mean to go overboard, and that's a great description of how I discovered that this is a gift. I've had it all my life. I sense that subtle stuff where other people just don't get it. Well, what's so big about that? Today, this is an example. Today, our Christmas cactus bloomed on Valentine's Day. Months later, and it's way behind, but all the little blossoms fell off, and I looked at it and I thought, look at all these little stamens, all this pollen. I've never noticed that before. These buds drop, and I showed it to my wife. She says, "Oh yeah, Yeah, big deal. I said, well, for me, it's fascinating because I hadn't looked that closely. And anyhow, so I was examining that. And of course, I noticed things like that. I don't know.
And you guys
That's
have been on
especially that sensing.
yes. You guys have been on this journey for how long now?
Well, for me, it's been almost a year, I
Okay.
think,
And
when I look back,
not too
roughly.
far behind that for me.
Okay.
And one of the ways I know that is we started working on this song very brand new. I mean, I read that in Lane's book, and I heard that it was a trait rather than a curse. And the lyrics came to me one night in my sleep. I guess I woke up and I thought, whoa, there's something right about us. It started with me, of course. Something right about me to hold and heal, to love and trust. There's something right about me. And I thought, oh, and then the melody came and I thought, and it wouldn't leave me alone. That's the clue that it's time to, the muse is talking to me. I'm called to do something here. And then I shared that idea with Michael. And before you know it, here, that was about a year ago that we started on our song. It took us about a year by the time we got a video done. I just threw that in, but that's one of my markers because I don't know exactly when I first discovered this.
Okay.
Thanks for listening.
So let's dive into the song. So we will, like I said earlier, we'll include the video that you guys have recorded for that in our production editing. And so you have this title of the song come to you, and then a melody appeared alongside that. How did you guys work this out together as to the finished product? How did that come to be?
Well, my view is we threw the idea back and forth to each other, felt for rhythms, pacing, how to get the message across. The verses that he put together made good sense because it began kind of talking about oneself, but then pretty soon expands and touches everyone who has that kind of feeling, or the questions that we have. The sensitivity is a quite clear reality to those of us that have that. To somebody else might say, what the heck are you talking about? But for those of us that feel these feelings, bang, it's a real thing. And so we bounced this back and forth and made little changes in this and rhythmic feeling and describing how to create the scenario from beginning to end that made a complete picture was the idea, I think. And then once we assembled the idea musically, and then we played that back and forth, trying to turn it into a finished product that sounded good. And then Walt said, well, we need to make a video of this. And so then it brought a whole new life to itself, because everybody knows that video takes a whole lot more work than just singing the tune one time, right? So it turned into an extravaganza and was great fun to put together with a great deal of work and some challenges, but overall we were pleased with the outcome.
Well, I know that Bill and I can both attest to this, that we probably couldn't recount how many times in our life somebody said, "What's wrong with you? What's the matter with you?" And so the fact that you guys turned this song into a positive, "What's right with you?" is just, I think that's one of the strongest pieces of this song. Not only the music and the lyrics, which are meaningful, but just flipping the script on the whole idea of there's something wrong with us, and flipping it over and making it into a positive kind of anthem, I would say.
Yeah.
I was gonna say that's probably it hasn't officially been designated as the official song of the highly sensitive community, but it's well on its way to being appreciated for a similar status, because what I really appreciated about the song, and when Walt shared it with me, was the honesty and simplicity of the song. It's not, you're not having to try to figure things out. It's just a very honest depiction of what everybody almost everybody I've ever talked to that's a highly sensitive person has gone through that moment where you ask yourself that question. What the heck is wrong with me? Why am I not like everybody else? Why do I take things in a different way? And, having heard the term over and over again, you're too sensitive, you think too much, you're too emotional, and you put that together with also being a man, and everything we've been taught about masculinity, it's kind of an antidote to that because it's honest, it's real. And when you guys were making the video, Walt, you did a great acting job because you started out with this very forlorn, almost, singing the question, and then realizing that at some point it's dawned on you that there's not anything wrong with me, that there's something right about me. And your countenance changed and your voice started picking up and we're singing the song as almost as Marcus said, like an anthem. It's a statement, really. There's
Yeah.
something about that. How did you feel about doing that? I mean, was it something you thought, I need to really show the arc of where I've come from and where I'm at now with my sensitivity?
Well, thank you guys for for appreciating the song. That's the best gift you can give to an artist. What happened there? It was quite a calamity. I wanted to tell a little bit about the calamity, and then you might understand why I could go into that acting. It dawned. Well, anyhow, first of all, that song came in piecemeal. I got the melody and just the lyrics, and we really decided. Michael and I did just back and forth and working on Zoom because he's in a different part of the state. We're across from each other, and we came up with starting out with us, something wrong about us, something right about us, and then to go to me, but not to go to the you first. We're not pointing fingers. There's something wrong with me, and then that's an authenticity that there's something right about you. And then we include, there's something right about all of us. So that's why the four choruses that way. And the other piece that came in, the front, that didn't come in the message to start with. It came out of this organic process of, and I'm going to a cappella it right now so we can get the lyrics out anyhow. Life's too short. It's been so long. Why am I so sensitive? Is there something wrong? Am I alone? So that's a boy, I get goosebumps just singing it. Because that's how I felt. That's how I felt. So then there was and then the end, and then Michael shared, because if it was just that piece of the song, as newcomers wouldn't understand, well, what does this have to do with anything? Well, so him sharing that it's a trait rather than a curse with music in the background was, to me, a beautiful way to segue from this terrible feeling, an awakening through the whole song. And it just, all of a sudden, we're in this together, which is kind of so some calamity that happened doing that video. It was one of the best things I think that ever happened to the song. We were at a beautiful Lake Coeur d'Alene in Idaho. My wife, she's completely opposite to me, and I don't always like to listen to her, but she says, guys, we were building the campfire, by the way. We were going to have the campfire in front of us with a camera showing the campfire and a small campfire and us. Well, the woods was burning down kind of quick. It's kind of dry. So we had to stoke it a couple of times, and we were all set up. But meanwhile, the sun is setting. I don't know if you guys want to hear this detail, but it's what happened. The sun's setting, and shoot, we better hustle. And Barb had told us, and I think Michael's wife too, said they were sitting off on the beach. But they said, the wind's going to change. That smoke's going to be in your face. So we were all set up, and dang, if the smoke isn't blowing in our face, what are we going to do? So we had everything. We had to move our cameras, move us. We ended up just sitting on a log. Quick, let's get this thing. But then so I was stimulated, overstimulated, which I can sound like I am. But boy, did that come quick. And so we did basically one take. And what happened was when I ponder this song and ponder the message that I got as a kid, what's wrong with you? You're too sensitive. Or I'd be performing and you made a mistake. Come on, you can do that over. You can do that right in front of people, friends. And they say, oh, Walter, you don't have to do that. Oh, dad. Oh, yeah, he does. My dad. And he wanted me to be tough. You know, they were in a logging and mining business. My grandpa had a logging company and they were all tough, you know, John Wayne. And I wasn't that way. And they tried to make me that way. So when I now to the point of that intro of the song, I really was feeling that out of overstimulation with having to change everything. And when I sat down and Michael and we might have done just a quick checkup tuning and then we did it, I was feeling that. I was feeling that almost like I'm damn near made a mistake again because I didn't listen to my wife. If you know what I mean. So I was really back into that. It wasn't just acting. But later on, I showed it to my family, and my brother said, "Why you were really quiet. You were really looked upset. You okay?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Just acting." But it wasn't just acting. It wasn't like I followed a whole Hollywood script. It was what I grew up with. That's how I felt growing
Well,
up, and as a man too. Thanks.
it's almost, Walt, the song called for it, right? You know,
Yeah,
you've
it did.
seen many artists who sing songs, and it sounds to me like they're experiencing the love, the pain, the anguish, whatever in the song. And so that's almost to me just like taking a professional angle with that by showing the emotion while you're playing it as well. And I thought it was good. Excellent, actually. And I would have never known about the smoke. It just never dawned on me. But the thing about it was a beautiful location. My goodness, it's beautiful. Love living up here in the PNW. But it was the song, you know, I started zeroing in on the lyrics and the song and what was coming across. And I certainly hope that's one of the things people take away, is the most important part of this is the honesty of that arc you are making, transforming from kind of a big question mark. Who am I? Why am I different to actually coming to a point of acceptance? And that's something I think any HSP can hear. And as you remember, I shared this with my daughter-in-law as young
Yes.
musicians that she tutors and works with. And this one little girl just absolutely snagged it. And she did a rendition of it I shared with you guys. But that's the kind of effect that it has on sensitive people is it is an anthem to acceptance. So it was beautifully done. Beautifully
And I'd
done.
like to add to that, Bill, and say
Thank you
that
so much.
it's actually got a universal appeal to it as well, because every person on this planet has probably at one time or another tried to figure out why they were so different from somebody else or how come they couldn't fit in or how come. I mean, it's got all of those themes embedded in the song. So yes, it definitely appeals to the highly sensitive person because we all have personal experiences like that. But I think additionally it'll appeal to people who may not identify as highly sensitive, but just how they were the black sheep in the family or how their life went a different direction than their siblings or whatever it might be. So I applaud the universality of it, especially when our audience gets to listen to it and see the video. I think they'll agree.
Well, what kind of feedback have you guys gotten? Have you heard anything that, all that I've heard of it from feedback for the song has been very positive. So are you also getting the same kind of feedback too?
Yeah. That's what I hear from folks. They say that's meaningful stuff. For somebody to say that about a song means it communicated, because that's my experience in songs. Things that knock me out. I feel like I have pretty common tastes. So when a song brings me to tears, or an event brings me to tears, I am convinced to this day that there are other people that can feel what I feel. I'm not the only one like that. But I used to think I was sissy was the word when I was a kid, that if you cried because something was so beautiful, people said, what's wrong with you? Listen, come on now, throw that ball back there. And, going through the mental anguish of being the last one picked for dodgeball, there's that feeling of, oh my God, nobody wants me. Nobody wants. So it's that kind of thing. And if you're sensitive, you record that in your book of memories. And as we grow older, our book of memories grows too. And when we have a lot of those things that occur, we make a grand decision that obviously we're not as good as everybody else, or we wouldn't be feeling like this. Hey, that sounds like a sensitive person.
It reminds me, I don't know if anybody here today knows who Janice Ian is.
Oh,
She was a folk artist back in the 70s. And she did a song called At 17, which has a lot of similar themes to this song that we're talking about. And I'll tell you what, that song At 17 made me cry every time it came on the radio because I identified with it. I don't cry so easily now, but your song has a similar effect on me. It just really is got that power behind it because it's so presuming, I guess is the word. It doesn't try to be anything. It's just what it is, and it's done in an authentic way by two people who have felt those things deeply. So I think that to me gives a lot of the value to the song, is that it is so authentic and so powerful. And being such a quiet type of song, there's no raucous party anthem in there anywhere.
Well, I think what it does too is it speaks to, as you mentioned, I remember that song by Janice Ian. Also remember the song by Roger Hodgson called Logical Song, which was the chorus said something about, please tell me who I am. And I thought, wow, that encapsulates that feeling of being a kind of an exception to the rule, being excluded, being an outcast in other people's eyes because you're different. And this song captures that feeling as well, that, that highly sensitive people, most highly sensitive people I talk to have had that experience of feeling like the odd person out. And whether it's in social settings or in families or at work or wherever, they feel like nobody understands me. And what's lovely about this song is that it comes to a positive conclusion that I'm okay, that it's all right, that I'm good. And that is truly a message that highly sensitive people, generally, highly sensitive men specifically, need to hear. That you're all right, just who you are. There's nothing wrong with you. This is not a disorder. This is not a malfunction of your brain or anything else. And you guys capture that so beautifully.
Cool.
So I'm going to ask you a question, which I think the audience is probably already thinking. What's next? Have you got more songs coming? Are you planning an album? Are you going to do a tour? Are you going to go around the world? Or what's up for you guys next with the songs?
I want to make a quick suggestion before you start, Walt, you said something a little while ago about I'm not the only one. And I immediately thought there's a song title for you for your next song is I'm not the only one. And continue exploring the same, similar themes.
Yeah.
Well, I realize one of the things that I had my wife and I had a coffee date with our oldest son, and whom I love and appreciate so much. And he said to us, he said, when you remember that this podcast, because he was asking about it, and he says, remember when it's produced and published, it's frozen in time. So if you said you had a song ready with a certain title and it's just about coming out, and then if something happens, you don't do it, it's like, well, what happened? And if you give anyhow. So I'm hesitant to say what we are exactly working on. I'll give you a general idea, at least from my standpoint. Michael, you can chime in here too. But I've got some meditation music almost done. Got another really cute song that Michael originated. This is probably also a time to talk how we work. We started coming up, well, I came up with the first, but it was us putting it together. I couldn't have done it all myself. And then he has a song and I help him. I mean, we're doing it together and it comes out together, but we don't get, the muse doesn't talk to us in stereo right at the same time. And then, so I'm working on that kind of stuff. I feel the strongest call. I didn't know this to write songs for highly sensitive people. That's where my mission is. It isn't to try to produce an album. Mikey, can you say some stuff about that? Then I want to tell how I compose, but I don't want to jump that right in. I want to hear how you see it. What we're
Okay,
working on.
well, Walt and I both came to songwriting because of what drives us as individuals. The majority of our lives were not spent together. He was growing up doing what he did. His career was what he was. Mine was what I was. I have been a performer almost full-time since 1966 when I had left the Air Force, and I've found a gig playing music 6 nights a week in Seaside, Oregon on the strip down there, and getting $10 a night, and thought I was stealing money. People put money in the jar and say, "What's a guy like you doing in a place like this?" I said, "Just waiting to get discovered." So performing was part of my life, but writing came about probably a year or two after that. My first song I ever wrote was in 1963, and it was it's about the song itself is immaterial, but the point is the idea to communicate something that I was feeling to somebody else was important. A phrase that came to me some years ago from some ministers that I met and have worked with over the years, writing a lot of music for what they were trying to communicate. The phrase was touching hearts and transforming lives. That to me is part of what music can do. The impact of songs that have knocked me out, just like you mentioned 17, those kind of things touched my heart. And part of my writing is wanting to do that. When I went to Nashville, however many years ago that was, my point was trying to do that. And one music publisher, he said, your stuff is too broad. It's not personal enough. And because I was writing big things to try and move the world, and it didn't happen. I wrote personal things that didn't move anybody either. There are lots of stories about my time trying to get people to hear my music, but the idea was I kept writing. I could not stop this thing, and I continue to this day writing a variety of styles and messages, some for fun, some for serious, some trying to touch hearts and transform lives. And the communication that Walt and I have had about this is we both agree. We want to touch people who are open and hoping for something to touch them. And so that's part of why we do this, not to create a ton of albums, to create a piece of music that does that job.
You know, we talk a lot about creativity on this podcast, and it will be a big theme for us. But I think the worst thing you can do as a creator is to be thinking about a monetary end goal.
Yeah.
When you're writing. You gentlemen have been around long enough to know that to get to authentic, true, the kind of music and lyrics that touch people's heart, it has to come from inside at a special place. It's almost like you're making a deal with the universe. I'm going to expose part of my soul into this music, and I'm just going to release it, and it's going to touch people, and wherever they may be. And you're not having an expectation that you're going to become huge financial successes.
Yeah.
And that's really the way to write the purest stuff, whether it's writing, whether it's writing lyrics and music or doing art, any of that stuff. And that really does do my heart good to hear that, because that's really where I think the good stuff is when you dig just to discover internally. Is that kinda how you compose, Walt? Is with that kind of
Yes,
thing in mind?
that was beautiful to hear. Yeah, that's yeah. And I wanna say Michael and I have different genres that we grew up with. I grew up when I was because I was so sensitive, when I'd go to bed at night, I'd be stirred up and couldn't get to sleep. My folks bought me for 8th grade graduation a 8 transistor Philips radio. Boy, that was something, and I could turn it down all the way, volume on low, and listen to jazz from KSL, Clear Channel jazz from Salt Lake City, and I could hear jazz. I was up in the mountains, Cascades in central Washington, um, and we didn't get much reception. We got a lot of cowboy music, but and I would listen to that. So my heart, I played in jazz bands growing up and played uh, accordion, trombone, guitar, keyboards, and I even had a song camp. Uh, if you get my email, you'll see it's a song dash camp. Camp was a creative arts mentoring project. That was my retirement project with kids, at-risk kids, grade school kids. And some of the stuff, one of the songs that came out of there really touched me. This turn that frown upside down, make it a smile, and the kids wrote that. We wrote it together. So I was into writing like that. But how I compose, I don't know if the audience knows Bob Ross, but on PBS, The Painter. So he doesn't just come out, wham, here's a lake scene. He says, well, let's get a little bit of, you don't even know what it's going to be on a canvas. Here, a little bit of paint here, a little bit here. And over here, I kind of see, maybe there'll be some green and, oh, here's some blue and we better put some white up on those for clouds. You're seeing the picture develop. That's when I compose. I don't say, okay, here it goes. We're going to record it all the way straight through. I am a performer too. I get performance anxiety, I guess. But when I compose on my keyboard, I have a Yamaha keyboard right down in front of me here. I literally paint. I'm painting a melody. And as I'm doing, so this is to me the important part. I don't necessarily know what notes or tone or touch I'm going to have until I'm there. It's like painting and watching this painting unfurl. Oh, and I'll back up. That's the beautiful stuff with editors now. I can back up audio editors. I back up and I change it and I'll change the volume. And then I go to the next little segment. Sometimes it's 4 bars. A bar is musical thing. But usually it's just a couple, just small. So I'm making a painting and then I'll listen to it. And if it isn't from my heart, if it doesn't feel right, I'll do it again, right over it. But finally I come out and then I typically, how Michael and I've worked, when I get a melody, I'll edit a draft of it and share it with him and say, what do you think? And he'll come in with ideas. And when he writes music, he as a performer, he'll typically go pretty much all through the whole thing or a good big chunk of it. And then he'll share it with me and I'll say, yeah, well, and we'll give each other thoughts. Does that answer your question in terms of how I
But
compose?
yeah, it sounds to me like obviously you guys are collaborators, and I love that use of Bob Ross. I can remember I used to sit my kids down in front of a TV and they would watch him, and it would be entertaining for them to see this picture come to life. Little dab, little squirrel over here, little
It was a
there's an
happy little
eagle coming
squirrel.
down, right? That kind of stuff. Not only was he animating, so to speak, on the canvas, because they're sort of animating in his way of expressing that, but that's a great way of describing your creative process, and that's like I said, it's something that's important to both Marcus and I to share with our audience about that you're both highly sensitive men, you're observational, you pick things out, you see things, you hear things, and so forth, but you're also in a process of discovery when you're creating. It's not like
Yeah.
you're really trusting all those components, your background in music, your understanding, all your life experiences and everything, and just kind of letting that flow out of you. That
Yeah.
flow state to me is the essence of creativity.
Yeah, I agree. And don't forget that
Wow.
Bob Ross called them happy little squirrels. They
Oh,
weren't
happy
quite
little
squirrels.
squirrels. Yeah. No,
That's
there's
They
no
were happy
depressed
little
squirrels in
squirrels.
a Bob Ross painting. I tell you right now, he paints them right out.
that's
Well, I
funny.
know something that I identified with what you're saying, Walt, is that as a writer, I've been known to finish writing a novel. You're talking 400 pages or so, and then turn around and scrap the whole thing and start over because there was some piece of it that just wasn't working in the composition. And so I would do it all again. And, I think that as a sensitive person, my creative process is similar to yours, it sounds like, in that each piece has to be pretty specifically correct in our heads for us to be okay with it.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
Well,
thank you for reflecting those.
yeah, well, that's great to hear. And like I said, this is one of our themes of this podcast is to speak about sensitivity, but also sensitivity and the creative process too, and how that applies. And that, as Marcus has alluded to, a lot of times it isn't just sensitive people that follow that same process. It's any kind of creative person, whether they're sensitive or not.
Yeah.
Well, it's about time we're going to have to wrap this up. Is there any parting words you would like to share with younger, creative, sensitive men or women out there? As you said, this experience, your journey is starting to evolve now, and you're finding that as you've done this, there's a purpose underneath it too. It's almost like
Yeah.
finding a little hidden gold nugget down there, utilizing your skills as musicians and composers. What would you offer a young, highly sensitive person who's thinking of embarking on a creative career? Is there any little words of wisdom that you can share that you've learned?
For me, it's quite simple. I told this to my son I have a son who is a songwriter, musician guy like me, and he does different music than I do. But the thing that I told him that for me is important is don't be afraid to create junk. Create something. You can always go back and rewrite. You can do all these things, but to take whatever idea pops into your head and watch it, see what happens, because rather than being a piece of broccoli, it might turn into a tree, and if you keep messing with it, it might turn into a broccoli salad with a tree behind it saying, hey, it looks just like me. You can't
Yeah,
tell what's going to happen if you don't stifle the process. That's what I think is important.
that's great advice. Walt?
Well, I've got a number of things I could share, but I know we're tight for time here. I had a leader in my career. He was young and he picked me, and he noticed that I work. And he said, Walt. Well, I think he almost kind of whispered it behind me, Walt. He knew I was a musician, and he is too. He says, Walt, music isn't music without space between the notes. And what he was
Well,
meaning there, Walt, you can't work these 16-hour days trying to work on a project. Give yourself a break. You need to refresh yourself. So that's one thing. And the other things, I think the prayer of St. Francis says we are channels of thy peace. And what I learned about channels is they can clog up. And you can't just push more into a pipe or a straw. Straw is a good example. You get it to flow by giving away. So don't think about getting, think about giving, and the getting happens automatically through the straw. If we're a channel. So that's what I've discovered about life is music isn't, and I create that way is to, like I've said, I pause in my creation process. But I also realize I'm serving a purpose here. I am still, just young people know that I still have issues with my high sensitivity. I got a critical voice inside that wants to tell me I'm not good enough. What the hell's wrong with you? That kind of stuff. And we have to address those and let them out. But I find that I'm the biggest help by giving to others. And and I'm trying to be selfless that way by giving, realizing I have a purpose here, not just for me. I don't know if that makes any sense, but those are two things that I learned along life I wished I had had that when I was young, and I didn't. I got that as an adult.
Well, you got it when you needed it, it sounds like. So good for you. Okay, thank you all, Michael and Walt. Thank you exponentially for being here today. We appreciate you. Can't wait to hear the song again. And for our audience, stay tuned for the next episode of Stillwater's podcast and be kind to yourself.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
guys. Bye.